I have come to set the earth on fire, and how I wish it were already blazing. Jesus, as he instructs his disciples, is using this very provocative and powerful image of the nature of fire. And there's a bit of a double entendre in this image of fire, in the sense that, on one hand, fire is nurturing. It brings warmth, illumination, and energy. But on the other hand, it's destructive. It can consume everything in its path. And so we can take from these natures a couple of points. One, the zealousness and the energy with which we follow God is the side of fire that the world is on fire for God, that we're moved by love of God and his compelling mission for us to the point that we energetically follow it in our lives to the exclusion of many other things. On the other side, fire has the properties to be able to destroy all the things in our life that separate us from God. So the destruction of sin enables us to be able to be conformed to the will of God in our lives. Now, theologians throughout the centuries have used this as sort of a way of explaining the mystery of purgatory. That when we are faced with the perfect love and goodness of God, that our souls burn with all the iniquities which separate us from him. And so this purification, this cleansing, is a putting to death of all those sins that separate us from the love and will of God. So Paul tells us that we must keep our eyes on Christ, because this message is contrary to what the world would have us believe. And certainly as Catholics, we're very used to being at odds with popular culture. The things that we hold precious in the tenets of our Catholic faith are commonly ridiculed or diminished in the eyes of the public because they just don't see life the same way as we do. So Jesus foretold of this division. He said, "If you think I've come to sow peace, think again. I've come to sow division." And it is because we must make these choices in our lives as to how we will conform ourselves to the message of God. He goes on further to explain that this emotion is so powerful within us that it has the capacity to separate us within our own families, that we can become divided in the way we view our obedience to God and its meaning in our life. For God has designed us for himself, and by his grace, he has given us the agency to be able to follow him, to receive his love, and to apply it in our lives, that we may have fullness of life in this life, but much more provoking is the life that we have in eternity with him, conformed to his perfect will. So when we get separated from those in our families, what's the tendency? Well, I sure am glad I'm part of the two and not of the three. Those people are totally outside the will of God. I'm so glad that I'm within his will. Well, that may be the natural tendency for us to believe this, right? But God has designed us with contrary natures as well. We have a wonderful imaginative mind, our conscious mind, which is able to reason, which is able to think critically, and to apply what God has told us to our lives beyond the scope of emotion, beyond the scope of habit. But he's also designed us with a subconscious mind. The intent of this mind is that it doesn't use the amount of energy that the executive center does. It's a conservation of energy in the sense that we can habituate thoughts that repeat, almost like an algorithm, to where a stimulus comes in and we react automatically without even thinking about it. How many of us have left our homes and set off for work or some other familiar place? And we realize when we get there that we haven't even thought about what we were doing along the way. Our minds were elsewhere. This automatic process of driving a car has taken over, and we don't even have to think about it. So it can conserve the energy of our creative thought processes for higher things. So this may seem mundane until you go to a country where they drive on the left side of the road. Then you can't go on automatic pilot because you have to continue to observe your surroundings and make decisions that conform to the new environment that you're in. And as hard as that is, wait until someone pulls out in front of you. Then you're in a situation of having to react, but you have to go through this whole thought process. What am I reacting to? So what is it about this power of habit that we possess that we must be careful of? We must submit to God with humility and surrender, that He might inform our awareness, to teach us about the effects of all our behaviors that sometimes we don't even know that we have. Certainly, through the process of penance and prayer, seeking the Lord in confession and through the Eucharist, we can receive this wisdom that God has to offer us. But we have to become active participants in our own lives. We have to be able to analyze the behaviors that are the signature of our lives and figure out, are these conforming to this perfect will that God has designed for us, or has it mired into something that separates us from God? Because our habits can be very powerful. They can cause us to do the thing we don't want to do and keep us from doing the thing that we desire, as Paul said. And so that can manifest in the way we treat each other. That having some kind of a habitual reaction to a trigger, we can very much diminish the dignity of those who we love and cause separateness there that doesn't belong. So this is an opportunity to take those two commandments that Jesus had prescribed for us. Love God and love one another. That's all there is to it. But this has to be an intentional act, because if we get right down to it, we're really lovers of ourselves, aren't we? And so sometimes we have to override that tendency to be so high on ourselves and to look at the other person and to say, you know what, maybe they're at a different place in their faith journey. Maybe they are coming to conclusions in a different way than the road that I did. And to have this empathy for others who are struggling just as we are to work out our salvation with faith, trembling, and humility. So yes, let us be consumed by the zeal for God's love and His presence in our lives. Let our sins be consumed by this powerful flame that will burn them away from our lives and allow us to be united with Him. But also, let us turn inward on a regular basis and say, what are the things in my life that don't serve me or others well? And we can ask the Lord that He will take those out of our lives, that He will destroy this separateness from Him and others, so that we may be restored in unity.